Welcome back, everybody. This is a video that I have been excited to make for some time now, and I feel like I finally have the perfect example to provide for you guys to give enough context to answer this ever so important question. And this question is what I believe is one of the few absolute essentials, the key to understanding late game itemization, how to close out games, and overall approach to team fights. So what is this question? This question is, how long is it going to take for a team fight to be decided? Meaning that you get this feeling X amount of time into the team fight that a team is going to win it. What is the win condition for a team in terms of the duration of the team fight? Everything we look at when it comes to spells, items, hero kits, everything, let's now look at it through the lens of how long the fight is going to take and the duration of fights that specific heroes like to have. So before we get into our example, I need to give you guys some nice criteria for you to use to help you gauge this question, because it is a relatively loaded question. So heroes that like short fights, what are their attributes? What are their characteristics? What are some commonalities between these heroes? I've got a few examples. 1, they have burst damage. 2, they have reliable lockdown, or the enemy has a lack of save such that you can dish out that damage. 3, you have long cooldown spells and ultimates like Black Hole, Chronosphere, where once that ultimate is over, so the first 5 seconds of the fight is over, you are significantly weaker than you were previously. And 4 is the inability to turn a fight. Some heroes in the game can pop Satanic BKB and turn on you and kill you. Other heroes, if they drop low, are forced to run away and have virtually no impact. So heroes that are forced to run away will generally lean towards wanting to initiate the fight, which means shorter fights in their favor. Now on the flip side, we're talking about long fights. So a lot of this is just pretty much the opposite of the short fights. Sustained damage or damage over time. So heroes like Viper, Venomancer, Necrophos, etc. Heroes that have the need to kite or the inability to burst the heroes on the opponent team, meaning that if they have BKBs, you can't kill them, so you need to force them to use their BKBs and you need to back off. So heroes that generally are weak against BKBs will often fit this description. Short cooldown spells that allow for disengaging and re-engaging. We're talking about heroes with low cooldown mobility like Slark or Faceless Void with Time Walk. And we're talking about heroes with low cooldown stuns like Lion, Grimstroke, etc. And then the ability to turn the fight. So if you're a hero that has buttons that they can hold, waiting for the opponent to overcommit, trying to burst you, and then you'd use these spells like Muerta Ultimate, for instance, and turn the fight, that means that your hero will generally lean towards wanting longer fights, or at least aiming to make sure the fight isn't over in the first few seconds. So you may have heard a few overlapping examples. Like I said, Faceless Void Chronosphere in the short fights, and also Faceless Void Time Walk in the longer fights. So it's important to note that some heroes in Dota, a sizable amount actually, can choose between which type of fight they want given the lineups on both sides. So I'm going to give a few examples. You have Faceless Void, who has Chronosphere, and you need to end the fight in the first 5 seconds. This often is because his other option is time dilation and time walk spam. But if he's going to get silenced, if he's going to get bursted, then the abuse of time walk is not very good. But if the opponent wants long fights and they rely on hitting him with a bunch of low cooldown spells, suddenly maybe it's better for Faceless Void to play around time walk, time dilation, and he can actually beat you in longer fights. This is an example where Void, because he has that built-in sustain from time walk, is bad against heroes like Venomancer in lane because he can't abuse it early, but in the late game, he's very good against these damage over time heroes because of it. Heroes like Lifestealer can simply itemize differently. They can burst you with Armlet, Deso, and a Basher, or they can play for Manta Radiance, really just depending on if they want the damage over time from Radiance sustained fights because he has Feast, he has Infest, or if he wants to use Infest plus Deso Basher to kill you instantly with a Blink combo. A hero like Necrophos that can abuse his Ags plus Heart of Taras combo where he does a ton of damage with his passive, or he can look to burst you with Reaper Scythe. You have a hero like Tusk that is a save support that can help prevent the opponent from bursting his teammates, making a longer fight possible, more beneficial to his team with Snowball. Or he can be a blink ags, where he dislocates somebody on the enemy team, you burst them, and you win short fights that way. So there are heroes that can vary. We've gotten a lot of context on what it means to have good short fights or good long fights, what heroes will generally prefer. So now that we've got all of that, I'm now going to ask you to look at the drafts for Team Spirit versus Virtus Pro Game 2 of the International and tell me what you guys think in the comments, or just say it to yourself now, of which team prefers what type of fights, and are they able to make that fight happen? Meaning that, yes, they have burst damage, but do they also have the stuns to follow it up? Which team dictates the type of fights that are going to happen? Usually the team that dictates the fights are the ones that choose to initiate, the ones that have more reliable lockdown. We've loaded into the drafts. We have Virtus Pro on the bottom and we have Team Spirit on top. So for Virtus Pro, we have Phoenix and Invoker supports. They have TA mid, CK carry, and offlane Centaur. So what I'm seeing in this draft is a lot of physical damage, single target, between TA and CK. TA has Meld Strike, CK has Reality Rift plus his illusions, and they also have the Blink initiation from Centaur, and the ultimate follow-up from Phoenix. So what type of fights do you think this team likes to have? Short fights or long fights? My gut read is a lot of burst damage, lockdown from CK and Centaur. That means short duration fights. On the other hand, we have Team Spirit with Grimstroke Tusk supports, which also offer a lot of burst, and then Muerta, Puck, and Dawn. So some important things to note about this is that the Virtus Pro lineup is a lineup that is going to bring the fight to you. So that means that whatever team brings the fight to the other one is usually going to make the other one counter their strategy. So what that means is if Virtus Pro wants short fights, then Team Spirit has to figure out, do they want to do the short fight themselves and look to burst Virtus Pro in return? Or do they want to buy kiting items or damage mitigation items to help draw out the fight? So that comes down largely to what their heroes excel at and then how they want to make that happen, if their heroes even can. So because they have saves and burst on the side of Team Spirit, all this means is that they have to decide as a unit what approach they're going to go for. So before we even load into the game, what are you thinking are the items on the respective heroes you'd be playing? You know, we mentioned Tusk. Are you going to go the Blink Ags? Or are you going to go the Snowball build? On Grimstroke, are you going to play for utility items like Ether Lens and Blink? Or are you going to go for survivability items like Ghost Scepter? If you're a hero like Dawn, are you going to be an Echo Saber, BKB, Assault Cuirass, where you run in front and tank? Or are you going to be a Blink Deso, where you're looking to burst? And these are the type of questions you have to ask yourself, because we've established which team is going to dictate the game. Now, what does the other team do in response? For the sake of this video, we're going to be looking largely at the way Team Spirit is approaching these fights and their reaction or approach to the way Virtus Pro's lineup functions. So here we are, 31 minutes into the game, with one of the first team fights in question. So let's first check out and see what items Team Spirit has elected to go for. So we see that Muerta has a lot of damage, a BKB, and a Shadow Blade. Shadow Blade is a very nice item if the opponent is looking to burst you, because the hardest thing about bursting people is making sure you find them. So Shadow Blade can be an initiation item on a hero like Earthshaker or Legion Commander, but it can also be an item that makes it so you are not easily burstable at the beginning of fights. Tusk has gone for Blink Ghost Scepter. So generally, position-based items like Blink can be used for initiation, or Snowball can also be used for counter initiation. If you have items like Ghost Scepter and Yule Scepter, these items are meant to prevent you from getting bursted. So that's what they're saying their approach is. We have the ability to save our teammates, but also prevent ourselves from getting bursted. The same thing with Grimstroke. He didn't go Ether Lens, into Sheepstick in order to kill people. He went Ether Lens to stay further back into Ghost Scepter so that if they jump him, he still will survive. So these supports are basically saying that they think they're the target of the burst. So one of the important questions I'm introducing when the enemy team has a lot of burst is, are you the target? Are you the desired initiated target that the opponent will go on? If so, build to live. If not, build to kill. Build to be a threat. Make it so they're more inclined to go on you as opposed to your squishy supports or your squishy carry like a Drow. On top of this, Puck has gone for a mobility spell, but she doesn't really need a survivability item. But you can see that with the Ags plus the Maelstrom, she's looking to do a lot of damage at the beginning of the fight with the coil. So he's making himself more of a threat. On the other side, you have Dawn. Did he go for utility with aura items and damage mitigation? Or did he go for burst to counter initiate and punish VP when they overextend? He has Blade Mail BKB to protect himself and then Blink Deso. So he's making himself less of an enticing target because he has BKB Blade Mail, but then he's making himself much more of a threat with Blink Deso. So these are all things that are considered when you look at Team Spirit's lineup. If you look at everything they have, they say survive the first 3 seconds, Ghost Scepters, Blink Daggers, Shadow Blades, then kill you. That's what their entire lineup says. So what we're going to see here going forward in the game is these fights are going to be decided very quickly. It's not going to be that everyone's dead in the first 5 seconds, but if nobody's dead in the first 5 seconds, who does that favor? That favors Team Spirit. So we can see, just for clarity, there's a Blink Bloodthorn on the CK. There's a Blink BKB on the Centaur. You know, there's a Blink Deso BKB. So there's a lot of jump you, kill you type of items on the VP side. So we're going to see the fight initiation. And they are going to find Muerta underneath the Shadow Blade. But he's got the supports behind him. So what's going to happen is they're going to go on Muerta. Then the Dawnbreaker ultimate's going to come in. And the Grimstroke, who has a shard, is going to use his Inkswell on the Muerta, instantly blow it up to remove the stun, so effectively a second save. And now they've jumped in, Centaur ultied, CK's committed, TA's committed, but nobody on the side of Team Spirit is dead. So Team Spirit has exactly what they need in terms of the recipe for success in this team fight, which is 5 heroes alive past the first 3 seconds. So we already know, based on the lineups and everything we've discussed, who's going to win this fight. And this is important because once this period is over, the first challenge, if you're the team that's against Virtus Pro, is let's get past that first 3 seconds. That's the first challenge, right? The second challenge is how do we now win the fight? And since Virtus Pro doesn't have the best disengage and they're pretty hard commitment, that's why Team Spirit has all of these damage items, these punishing items. So they have the Muerta with all these damage items. They have the Dawnbreaker with all these damage items. Egg's going to go off. It's going to die. Yatoro, since he has Aegis, allows himself to die. Notice how Laurel held his coil until about 10 seconds into the fight. Yatoro's saving his ultimate. Actually, it's just on cooldown. But you're going to see that they take him out. So now we find ourselves 42 minutes and 30 seconds into the game. We have Muerta with another Aegis. The story's the same, but what the difference here is that Tusk got an Ags from Roche. So his role in the game has almost completely shifted. We saw him playing behind Yatoro before, going for a save potentially. It ended up being the Grimstroke, but you know the idea. And now he's potentially an initiation. How is that going to affect this next fight? Which job should he prioritize? Well, let's go ahead and find out. Potion goes in. He blink kicks. But they reacted very quickly on the side of VP with a Bloodthorn. And he gets bursted on the side of Miposhka. Suddenly, Dawnbreaker ultimate used a bit late. Miposhka has died. Who's this fight favor? This fight clearly favors VP, the team with burst that has effectively killed somebody at the start. Especially when it's single target burst, because that means they can go from one target to the next. So Collapse is in. And you'd think that Team Spirit would actually just back off here, right? But instead, Laurel has committed. He's gone in. Killed the CK, right? He's thinking this is what we need to do. However, since it's on the side of Virtus Pro's base, Laurel dies to the burst damage. Dawnbreaker overcommits and is going to die to the burst damage as well. Yatoro's now all by himself. And this is something that's important to note, is that in the previous fight, they focused Yatoro, but he had Aegis. So even though they eventually brought him down, he was able to turn the fight anyways. We talked about the potential to turn the fight. But in this case, what we're noticing is if Yatoro's ever going to die, it's because his teammates are already dead. So this is an example where if you were the one that they needed to burst and you were going to need to use BKB Ultimate to survive, and then you still wanted to fight afterwards, what item would you go? You would go Refresher, because you need to use the same spell to protect yourself as you would to eventually kill them. But since he's not their primary target, since he's going to be the last one alive, we need to make ourselves more of a threat if they were to ever go on our teammates. So notice how Yataro's gone for a Daedalus as opposed to a Refresher. So maxed out on the damage. But in this case, oddly enough, it's Team Spirit's choice to re-engage that ends up backfiring. But this is something where even it's easy for me to say from bird's eye view that VP got the burst they wanted. That means this fight's to their advantage. But these are like in moment, tons of things going on. So you can see why Team Spirit's mistake ends up being a mistake. But in the game, it's very hard to know these things. So a lot of it's like about reflection and like in the future, how would you do it differently if a similar situation were to arise? So here we are. About 10 minutes later, Team Spirit's taken Roche, but VP has killed Dawnbreaker. It was effectively a trade, and a fight's about to start with Dawnbreaker having buyback. Let's just make sure we have all the context. So what's going to happen at the start? Tusk breaks smoke. He's exposed. Not honestly sure why Miposhka is lingering, and the save support is going to effectively get bursted. He might not have anticipated the nullifier coming out from the CK, because they did have the ink swell from Grimstroke to save him. Once again, 3 or 4 seconds into the fight, somebody on Team Spirit has been bursted. The exact recipe for success for Virtus Pro. So, buybacks can sometimes change things, which Tusk does buy back, but it's not going to be able to instantly rejoin the fight. So Dawnbreaker jumps in as well, gets bursted, and suddenly all of Team Spirit is on the run. So they're going to potentially even try to turn the fight again, bringing down the Centaur. But Puck also dies, where to use his BKB and kills CK, but is forced to retreat. Overall, you can see why Team Spirit still tried to put up a fight, but went from a 20k lead to 8k lead. Pretty disastrous result for Team Spirit, right? Because they lost Aegis, they had 2 diebacks, and they still lost the fight. So the last 2 examples really tell us that maybe if the opponent's win condition is bursting somebody, our best gut reaction is to get the hell out if they do burst somebody. In the case of a buyback like Tusk, it might be retreating to where he could potentially TP and reconnect to the fight, like retreating back to this outpost, rather than continuing the fight over here because it took him such a long time to reconnect. So these are all small questions and adjustments that we can make because of the way these fights go poorly. We find ourselves at 56 minutes with a cool little ward from Team Spirit as they're trying to smoke up this hill. Now, Yatro's going to walk up, knowing that he's not really the target they want because of the fact that they have 2 saves. Centaur's going to get a nice stomp, but what happened while the stomp was going on was Puck got a coil that was effectively fragmenting the fight. So the stun came in from Noticed, a really good one at that, a 2-man stun, but there is no follow-up in position. No damage is being done. That's why the reliable lockdown plus burst are both essential parts of winning short fights. So, Yatoro comes out of the stun. Miposhka manages to get his snowball off. Now, who's this fight going to favor? 5 seconds in, everybody's alive. That means the team that wants longer fights, the team that has turn potential, is favored. So we're going to see Miposhka manage to blink in, get the kick onto TA because he has the cheese. TA is going to be out of position now, get instantly bursted. And the rest of VP, anybody that can get caught, is going to pay the price. And one may argue that VP now wants to win the fight. They're buybacking. They're committing all in. But once again, they've used their BKBs. They've used their blink initiation. Their first 3-4 seconds has been botched. And that's okay. Like, I mean, it was also a good play by Team Spirit to go on the backliners at the same time. But it's clear. At the 5-second mark into every single fight, we know exactly who's going to win it. And this is the idea behind which team is going to win fights based on the duration. Now, obviously, this is just, in my opinion, a perfect example. This is just an archetypal example of a game, and it's not always this black and white. But there are so many little indications that you guys can use from games like this and games like your own to help you think about the win condition for your fights in terms of the duration. So I really hope you guys enjoyed this. It leads so much into what itemization you should have as a support, as a carry, your role in fights, what type of fights heroes want, how they make these fights happen. Are they the stun? Are they the damage? Are they the desired target? Are they going to turn the fight? Are they unable to turn the fight and they have to just sheepishly run away? These are the types of questions that this individual question of how long are the fights going to take to be decided kind of forces you to ask yourself. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know in the comments. Like, comment, subscribe. See you guys next time.